자, 다음 순서로 넘어가 볼까요? 다음에는 FTX 벤처스 브라이언 리 파트너님 무대 위로 모셔볼 텐데요. 오늘 강연 주제는 Next Wave of Web3 Applications를 주제로 준비를 해 주셨다고 합니다. 네, 여러분 파트너님을 큰 박수로 환영해 주십시오.
Hello. Thanks everyone for having me. So today I want to talk about how we, FTX Venture, generally identify some of the trends in this market and how are we trying to see the potential next generation of Web3 application. I think the whole idea centers around every cycle. Excuse me. Every cycle there will be a new environment that fosters new ideas. And most of the time, these environments are structured around three factors. And I can give an example on how these factors determine what kind of startup would thrive. So first thing is regulation. So regulation and policy is something that either breaks or take your startup or investment. So an example here would be, for example, when Obama was in administration, they launched Obamacare, which require every employee to get an insurance. So that led to like a blow up of insurance startup. So that's one example, and there's another example around like climate change and whatnot. And the second factor here is technology. Technology is sometimes one innovation really depends on another one. So an example here is there has been an attempt in building a personalized mobile device back in the 90s, but the device was so expensive. It was around $1,400 per device, and you have to pay $400 per month for the data. But fast forward to 2007, Apple created the first generation iPhone, and that was at a fraction of the cost. So this just shows that a lot of technology really depends on others as well. So timing is very important. And last is new behavior. So what new behavior means is, an example I like to use here is, for example, the newer generation unicorn like Uber, the sharing economy, right? Uber, Airbnb, DoorDash, food delivery. These are all depending on smartphone and smartphone penetrations. Like if they started in early 2000, then they would not work. They would only work after there's a very high mobile smartphone penetration after. So now I'm gonna surround this using these three factors to sort of analyze what happened before in 2017, which led to the first ICO bubble, and then I'm gonna use the same three factors to analyze what we had in 2018 to 2022. And then finally, we'll try to make some speculation on what's happening right now, and then using these to see what app might come out in the future. So in 2017, before 2017, there was really no regulation around crypto. Like no policymaker was really looking at crypto. And second, the technology was really just the blockchain itself. Like people they weren't really understanding what blockchain is, and let alone no one was coding in Solidity. No one was using smart contract. But one thing that's interesting is people have been using crypto as a financing tool, whether it's using as illicit activities on the darknet, and they slowly realize it's a great tool for fundraising. If anyone was in 2017, we remember that Ethereum only use case was to fundraise. Everyone was buying Ethereum to buy other tokens. So what came out of that cycle, right? People need to buy Ethereum, people need to sell it, people need to sell the token that they in exchange for Ethereum. So it's clearly the only Taylor app here is spot exchange, and really nothing much. Back then, smart contract gas fee, average gas fee was nearly zero. So no one was deploying any smart contract. So what about 2018 to 2022? We're going to look at the same three factors. So obviously, needless to say, I think everyone's been hearing this tens of thousands of times this year, is the Fed has, in the past 3 years, has almost doubled their asset on their balance sheet. And this had led to inflation and asset bubble in equity and bonds and real estate. And then people are really running out of things to invest. So a lot of these excess liquidity just spilled into crypto, which made crypto a high beta risk asset for this cycle. In terms of technology, bear in mind a lot of these are made in before 2017. Infura is a infrastructure which becomes a foundational infrastructure for a lot of the decentralized applications are using, which provide RPC node and APIs. There's Chainlink, which most DeFi are using right now as Price Oracle. Arweave for decentralized storage, and of course we have Tether as a stablecoin. And lastly, new societal behavior. Back in after 2017, there was a CryptoKitty hype, which really led to a lot of people start using MetaMask. So the MetaMask penetration was much higher. People are more comfortable using decentralized application. Second was the COVID lockdown. This really created a new wave, new incentive for a new type of behavior. Everyone was staying at home, more incentivized to learn new tech. The next one is meme culture. This is kind of funny where a very simple picture can coordinate a mass retail investor to coordinate any financial activities. So one example here is this is the reason why GameStop got short squeezed. And lastly, which is the house money effect. House money effect essentially means when you are in a casino and the more money you win, the larger the risk you take. And this is exactly what happened in the previous cycle, where people are feeling so rich and they made so much money from the last cycle, from the quantitative easing. They're looking for new things to bet on and try to bet bigger size, looking for more leverage. So what came out of this because of this? We have very risk-taking retail traders. We have excess liquidity, and we have a lot of demands for new trading products and leverage. So what the builders what can we do to satisfy this demand? So obviously, there's a new generation of exchanges, which is derivative exchange, which now has surpassed spot volumes. So FTX was started as a derivative exchange to mostly satisfy these more sophisticated traders. And then, of course, we have Deribit that provides options as well. And on the decentralized side, obviously, we have the AMMs, the borrow lending, so people can trade more assets and get even more leveraged. And then naturally, we have stablecoin adoption, which is now around 15% of total crypto market cap. Mostly stablecoin are mostly used as help facilitating these trading activities. We're using as a margin, using as collateral for derivatives. And lastly, I think worthwhile mention is Web3 games. But I think right now the entire market knows that these games are entirely fueled by excess liquidity from new entrants of new users. And the tokenomics are not sustainable, but it's definitely worth noting that it introduced a new idea into the gaming space that might potentially disrupt the entire gaming industry that I'll expand a little bit upon later. So what's next? So this is the billion-dollar question, right? What application should we invest next, right? So let's look at the same three factors. So, as SBF were talking about just now, regulation is definitely coming, whether or not we like it or not. There will be more investor protection, there will be more guidance, and this is a necessary step for institutional adoption. So because of this, we're expecting to see a lot more institutional graded or institutional focused product, whether it's DeFi on a centralized side or decentralized side. And the next factor here is higher interest rate. We went from zero interest rate environment to a high interest rate environment. And obviously the high interest rate environment led to the great deleveraging in crypto, which is 3 Arrow and Luna and Celsius. And I think we all come to consensus that a lot of the DeFi 2.0, 3.0 product doesn't really make sense. A lot of the irrational ideas being funded. And the second part here is we will switch from an investment into growth into value because private capital has been drying up, and a lot of the startups realize using private capital to fuel their growth is not sustainable, and then a lot of investors right now would like to see a clear business model with positive cash flow. So second factor here is technology. So clearly right now we have even better crypto native technology. So back then we would only have Ethereum, Bitcoin. But right now we have, no matter what kind of developers you are, there's always a blockchain or an ecosystem that will satisfy your need. You can build, no matter you're a JavaScript developer, a move called Solidity or Rust or whatnot. And then there's no shortage of incentive to drive more inflow of talents here. So you're seeing universities like MIT, Stanford, they're all running courses in blockchain and crypto. Every protocol is giving out grants. So if you're a talented developer, there's no shortage of finding capitals or resources to build projects here. And I think as an investor, you should also look outside of crypto. So as I mentioned, sometimes technology depends on other technology. And one area, this is just one of the many areas that I like to give an example of. So one area is the VR space, content creating space. So in VR and AR, right now we have around 200 million people in the world that owns a piece of AR and VR devices. And around 50% of the population in America are familiar with these devices. So VR and AR has experienced a tremendous growth. And the second part here is Stability AI, which is a company we recently talked to. They created a algorithm called Stable Diffusion. It's a very powerful AI technology. It's basically AI-powered text-to-image program. I will show you an example later. And then one last thing is, recently I just flew in from Tokyo, and I learned that there's a company called AnyColor, which is it's very fascinating. They are basically a marketing company for virtual influencers, and and if you think that more and more people using AR and VR, the cost for creating content is much lower because of this algorithm, because of this new technology, and then we have a demographic that's getting more and more comfortable with the digital world, interacting with a digital personality. Maybe a digital world is not too far from us. Maybe metaverse is not that far away. So here's an example of Stable Diffusion. So I try to think of the most random thing I can think of, a flying robot on the moon in the style of Van Gogh. And this is an original picture that is generated by the AI. So this is a free beta version. It's not even the full version yet. And I thought this is very impressive. So imagine in a world where this AI become more mature, any movies, anime, gaming content, metaverse, any sort of content creating space would be greatly disrupted by how much lower cost content can be created. And lastly, I want to talk about is a new behavior in the society. I think there's a huge need for self-sovereignty in the past. It has been discussed for the past couple years. Basically it means there's a shift from a free market to a government-determined market. And this is not only just on the economic financial level, which everyone knows that the entire market is determined by the central bank and Fed right now. There's nothing else going on. But also on a daily micro level as a citizen, right? You're being determined like what kind of things you can say, what kind of things you cannot say on the internet, sometimes what vaccines you have to do, or whether you're compulsory to do it or not. Things like this really cause like some frustration into some people, and people want freedom and their control. I think we all sort of understand like the awareness for data privacy and ownership have never been higher. And this is exactly the reason why apps like Telegram and Signal, which focuses on privacy, has blew up recently. So Telegram right now has 700 million active users, whereas Signal in 2021, there's 125 million downloads. So because of this, we think like privacy is a very important product here in the future. So we're very bullish on anything that sort of promote data privacy and ownership. And one thing, blockchain might be a perfect solution for this. And lastly here is the lack of security and trust. So I think I think right now, as you can see from the conflict between Russia and other parts of the countries, it's quite common to see people are doing bank runs, meaning people are withdrawing money from the bank and trying to, you know, trying to withdrawing money from the bank to hold it themselves. So they stop trusting their own bank, and they stop trusting their own currency because the currency devaluates a lot. So there might be a chance that maybe these people in lesser developed country, they'll be like, hey, maybe I should be my own bank. Maybe I should set up my wallet and start storing my assets and my life saving in crypto. And this is not only happening in lesser developed countries, it's also happening in developed countries with the news of, with the liquidity issue with Credit Suisse. I'm sure people are very worried about their money in Credit Suisse as well. So we looked at the factor I previously mentioned. So what are we looking at based on those? So first one is decentralized media. I think we think it's like the perfect solution for the issue that we discussed just now. Censorship resistant, which is, you can say whatever you want on the internet with free speech. Data ownership, like your data would not be used by a central authority for anything else. And it also solved the issue of fragmentation of social media. I'm sure everyone here are using multiple social media right now, like LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and whatnot. But if your credibility can be stored on the blockchain, essentially you can just have UI interacting with this blockchain, and you will not have to rebuild your credibility in the other platform as well. So for example, like if SPF is very well spoken on Twitter, he doesn't have to rebuild his credibility on Instagram, for example. And second area here is blockchain-based games. I think when we talk about Web3 games, it doesn't have to be just play to earn. I think a lot of people right now are just focusing on play to earn. I think something else that's more interesting to me is digital asset ownership, which is powered by NFT. So when you have digital asset ownership, meaning your in-game asset has a value, that would be very interesting for users as well. And second part is interoperability and composability, which is similar to the concept I described for social media, which means all your gaming assets and data are stored in a blockchain. So when a gaming studio built a universe and IP on this blockchain, you can partner with other gaming studios to use the same data and asset to build under the same universe. So you can infinitely expand your game. So it becomes a one giant game. And as a player, I have one character in one game. I can use that same character in another game. So this becomes a vastly more interoperable game for the gaming industry. And lastly, once you have all these games communicating with each other, obviously there will be a cross-game economy where I can sell my item here to buy exchange for item in another universe. And in terms of DeFi and CeFi, as I mentioned, like we're definitely expecting more institution coming into this space. So it's clear that I think there will be two areas that will be exceptionally interesting to see how it develops. So the first thing is financial inclusivity, which goes back to the crypto original ethos about banking the bankless. So you can have a hybrid DeFi of CD, I call it CDeFi, where lesser developed country people can enjoy the benefit from a financial system of a developed country, meaning you can simply submit your on-chain credentials in, let's say, in anywhere in lesser developed countries, and you can start using banking system in America, for example. And second part is more on the corporate institutional side. I like to see more institutional or banking systems start adopting DeFi, in a sense that if you think about it, during the huge deleveraging event, borrowing on Aave and Compound, you know exactly who's borrowing how much with what assets. You know exactly how leveraged these platforms are, and you know exactly what's the liquidation point. And these are, because of how transparent these things are, it's very, there's a lot of protection that we can do for knowing these data points. And you know how safely your assets are on these platforms. However, like it's you can never know how leveraged a bank is. You never know how safe your money is until like the Lehman Brothers incident, right? And lastly, just want to talk about what do we need to see to onboard the next billion users. These might not be investable areas, but it's something that we should definitely improve on. So the first thing is what we focus on is on FTX side is always make buying crypto easier and more seamless. We're always investing into regional exchanges, on-off ramps to help facilitate more seamless transactions, working with local banks and local governments for better and better fiat on-off ramp. So once you have fiat on-off ramp, you have to have ways to spend these crypto. So we have, for example, POS system to help merchants support crypto payments, and we have FTX credit card to help people spend their crypto. Second is better UI and UX. This is not only on a exchange level, but also on a protocol and a DeFi level. Excuse me. I think right now it's still very complicated to use DeFi. Most DeFi are used by power users right now. The UI and UX has to be improved drastically in order for everyday user to start using DeFi. And lastly is privacy. I think privacy is very important in a sense that, for example, whether you are a depositor into a bank or you are taking a mortgage, when you submit your personal data, these data should be private only to the bank or lender. But it's also important to know, like the example I provided previously, you should know how leveraged these banks are, or how safe these banks are to deposit in them. So there should be optionality for privacy. And one of the possible solutions here is potentially ZK Tech, which is still very early stage in the blockchain space. So lastly, I'd like to conclude is whether you are an investor or you are a startup founder or builder, you can sort of think about these three factors: regulation, technology, and new behavior, to see what you should be investing and what you should be building, and instead of just building anything that follows the hype. Thank you very much.
네, 브라이언 리 파트너님 다시 한번 말씀 감사드립니다.